This is the most beautiful village in Russia. But you shouldn't take your eyes off it, because when a place seems perfect, something is often carefully hidden. Viatskoye presents itself as the ideal Russian rural village, but walking through it reveals something else entirely. Every building tells a story. Some are written on tourist plaques. Others are glimpsed in the eyes of those who have lived there forever. Not all of them want to come to light. This video won't just show the pretty pictures. Here you'll see the everyday life behind the facade, the human relationships in a village where everyone knows each other, the traditional cuisine with its unquestionable rules, women of serene beauty and strong character, orthodox traditions that still hold sway, rumors whispered about, and beliefs that influence private decisions. Because Viatskoye appears suddenly, like an image too pristine to be accidental. 19th century merchant houses aligned with precision, facades restored down to the last detail, windows reflecting the sky as if nothing bad had ever happened there. The streets are immaculate. There is no unnecessary noise. Orthodox churches dominate the landscape with their serene domes, while the nearby river flows slowly, almost obediently. Everything conveys a sense of balance, and that's precisely why it's unsettling. Viatskoye is not just a place for photographs. It observes the visitor as much as the visitor observes it. And what you discover there isn't found in brochures or guided tours. Russia's most beautiful village. After realizing that Viatskoye is more than just a picture postcard, the next step is to wonder how it came to be this way. The impact is immediate. It's hard to believe that such a small village has such meticulous restoration. Nothing seems improvised. Every street leads to another picture-perfect scene. That initial feeling of admiration soon mingles with a quiet doubt. Was it always like this? The answer lies in its past. In the 19th century, Viatskoye was a village of prosperous merchants. It wasn't a forgotten dot on the map. It was a bustling center where money, goods, and prestige circulated. Entire families built their fortunes here. The houses that now resemble museums were, at the time, true symbols of economic power. That wealth left its mark on the architecture, the village's layout, and a very clear mentality. Order was synonymous with status. Over time, that splendor faded. The Soviet era was not kind to places like this. Viatskoye lost importance, population, and resources. Many houses deteriorated. Some were abandoned. For decades, the village was just one more among so many that seemed destined to slowly disappear, quietly, unnoticed. Life went on, but far removed from any ideal of beauty. Everything changed recently. Viatskoye was almost completely rebuilt and transformed into a museum village. The restoration was neither partial nor improvised. It was thorough, planned, and ambitious. The decision was made to restore its 19th century appearance, but with modern standards. The result is what dazzles visitors today, a place that seems frozen in time, yet offers modern amenities, attracts a steady stream of tourists, and maintains a carefully curated image. Herein lies the first stark contrast. The beauty is real. It's not artificial. The houses, churches, and streets exist and have a history. But daily life doesn't always align with that perfection. Walking through Viatskoye feels like everything is on display. Every corner seems designed for the outside gaze. This creates a strange sensation, as if the village were always being performed. Tourists arrive seeking tranquility, photos, and an authentic experience. The residents, on the other hand, live there year-round. For them, those immaculate streets are also workplaces, places of routine and weariness. Not everyone feels a constant sense of pride. Some feel pressure. Maintaining the image comes at a cost. It's not just about sweeping streets. It's about behaving a certain way, about not disrupting the harmony that others come to experience. This difference marks the first tensions. The visitor walks slowly, observes, marvels. The resident goes to work, keeps to a schedule, answers repeated questions, smiles when appropriate. It's not open hostility. It's a subtle distance. Viatskoye lives off tourism, but it doesn't live solely for tourism. And that line is fragile. The experience of walking through the village changes over time. At first, everything seems too perfect. Then the details that don't appear in the photos begin to emerge. Evaluative glances, prolonged silences, conversations cut short when a stranger gets too close. It's not paranoia. It's the natural dynamic of a small place that knows it's constantly being watched. Many visitors feel a mixture of fascination and distrust. Fascination because Viatskoye offers a beauty that's hard to find these days. Distrust because that beauty seems to demand something in return. It's not just about looking. Respect is expected. Discretion is expected. Visitors are expected to understand, even if no one tells them, that there are invisible boundaries. Walking through Viatskoye is to understand that not all villages want to be fully understood. Some stories are there for those who know how to listen. Others are kept for those who are part of the place. That tension between what is shown and what is hidden is what makes many fall in love with the village, and others leave with a discomfort that's hard to explain. Viatskoye is beautiful, yes, but it's also a stage where everyone plays a role. Some by choice, others because they have no alternative. And that's just the first layer of a place that, the more perfect it seems, the more questions it raises. Women, magnetism, and emotional life in a small town. In Viatskoye, women don't go unnoticed, but neither do they flaunt themselves. Their presence is felt before it's understood. There's something about the way they walk along quiet streets, how they hold your gaze just a second longer than necessary, the understated way they occupy the space. Classic Slavic features, fair skin tanned by the climate, firm features, eyes that don't easily lower their gaze. There's no excess, no theatrical gestures. Elegance isn't a pose, it's a consequence of their surroundings. The town shapes character. Living in a small, observed, orderly place steeped in history imprints a particular way of moving and relating. Here, the body speaks louder than words. Gestures are measured. Smiles aren't given freely. Every interaction carries real weight because there's no anonymity. In Viatskoye, what you do today is remembered tomorrow, and what is hinted at can become a topic of conversation without ever being spoken aloud. Attraction exists, but it's silent. It doesn't manifest itself in direct phrases or obvious advances. It's built in glances exchanged in a shop, in repeated encounters that seem casual, in brief conversations that say nothing concrete but leave a palpable tension hanging in the air. For someone from outside, this can be disconcerting. Many mistake this reserve for coldness. Others interpret it as disinterest. Both are usually wrong. The rural environment demands emotional strength. The women of Viatskoye grow up with a clear awareness of boundaries. Family, surname, and reputation are not abstract concepts. They are living structures that influence every decision. This is reflected in their body language, a straight back, a confident gait, the way they listen without interrupting. There's no rush to impress, no urgency to please. Paradoxically, this confidence is what is so magnetic. Foreigners arrive with preconceived notions. Some expect to find immediate romance, exoticism, easy stories. The reality is quite different. Curiosity exists, yes, but it's not naive. There's an interest in what's different, in what comes from afar, in stories of other lives. However, that interest doesn't imply automatic openness. Here, one observes first, evaluates later. A decision is made at the end, often in silence. The difference between genuine curiosity and external fantasy is quickly apparent. The visitor who arrives believing everything is readily available is in the wrong place. Viatskoye doesn't operate that way. Attraction isn't negotiated in public or accelerated by insistence. In fact, insistence usually closes doors. Respect, on the other hand, opens cracks. Small, almost invisible, but real. In small towns, social codes are strict even if they aren't written down. A conversation in the town square can be innocent or interpreted as something more. A repeated greeting can raise questions. Frequent visits to the same place don't go unnoticed. Women know this from a young age and learn to navigate the system intelligently. It's not about fear, but about emotional calculation. There are stories that are never fully told. A traveler who stays longer than planned and begins to notice that he always runs into the same person at the same time. A conversation that lingers on a cold afternoon, without promises, without confessions, but with an intimacy that needs no name. An exchange of glances during a local celebration, where the entire village is present, and yet no one seems to notice what's happening between two people. There are also the limits. Decisions made behind closed doors. Attractions that don't progress because the social cost would be too high. Relationships that never begin, not for lack of desire, but because of an excess of consequences. In Viatskoye, choosing isn't just an individual act. It's a movement that affects others, and that's learned early on. Some women decide to leave the village seeking anonymity, freedom, different rules. Others stay and turn that confinement into a form of power. Not all of them want to escape. For many, stability, predictability, and deep relationships matter more than adventure. That doesn't make them passive, it makes them aware. Routine, social control, and silence. Living in Viatskoye year-round is nothing like visiting for a weekend. When the buses leave, the cameras are put away, and the streets return to their slow pace, the village reveals its true logic. It's not a place frozen in time. It's a place where time repeats itself with precision. Each day resembles the last, not out of monotony, but out of necessity. Routine here isn't comfort, it's structure. Mornings begin early, not out of ambition, but out of habit. Jobs are tied to tourism, museums, building restoration, small family businesses, and cafes serving traditional dishes to curious visitors. Others work in essential services, maintenance, agricultural support, and transportation. There aren't great opportunities, but there are clear roles. Everyone occupies a recognizable place within the village's machinery. This clarity comes at a price. Everyone knows who does what time they leave home, who they meet with, and when something changes. This constant proximity eliminates anonymity. In a city, one can disappear into a crowd. In Viatskoye, disappearing is impossible. Absence is as noticeable as presence. If someone is missing for a day, someone mentions it. If they're missing for 2, someone asks. If they're missing for a week, there are already rumors circulating. Privacy is limited, though no one openly violates it. There's no direct spying, but there is constant observation. Gazes that record, silences that store information, conversations that are never forgotten. Social control doesn't need visible authority. It works because everyone participates in it, even those who claim not to. Rumors spread quickly, but not always loudly. They don't circulate in shouts or outbursts, but in short phrases, ambiguous comments, and silences laden with meaning. A story can begin with "they say" and end up as accepted truth without anyone remembering who first said it. In a small town, repetition replaces evidence. Silence is a social tool. It's not about fear, but about emotional survival. Keeping quiet avoids conflict. It avoids being stigmatized. It avoids becoming the subject of conversation. Many people learn from a young age that talking too much has consequences. That's why deep conversations usually happen behind closed doors, among very few people, or never happen at all. There are those who adapt perfectly to this system. They find security in knowing what to expect, in knowing everyone, in having no surprises. For them, Viatskoye is home, identity, continuity. But there are also those who feel the constant weight of being watched. People who feel judged even when no one says a word. For them, the village can become suffocating. There are stories of those who left. Young people who studied in bigger cities and decided not to return. People who saved for years to leave quietly. Discreet departures without grand farewells, as if leaving also required silence. Some return eventually, others sever all ties. The village remembers everyone, even those who are no longer there. And then there are those who could never leave. Not for lack of desire, but for lack of options. Families who depend on local jobs. Elderly people who never knew any other life. Individuals who missed their chance and then discovered it was too late. In Viatskoye, time doesn't rush, but it doesn't wait either. Daily life is sustained by small, repeated rituals. The same route to work, the same greeting, the same bench in the square. This repetition creates a sense of order, but also of invisible confinement. There are no bars, but there are clear boundaries. Unwritten, but understood by all. Tourism brings money and activity, but it also reinforces the feeling of being on stage. The inhabitants know when they are being watched as part of the scenery. They learn to live with it. Some take advantage of it, others detest it. There is a clear difference between the image that is sold and the life that is lived. That distance is managed in silence. Religion, faith, and customs that are not up for discussion. In Viatskoye, religion is not a topic of open conversation, nor a decorative element for visitors. It is a constant, silent presence, deeply integrated into daily life. The Orthodox Church here does not act as a visible spectacle for tourists, but as a moral structure that orders behaviors, schedules, and decisions. There's no need to talk about faith to know who respects it and who doesn't. It's noticeable in gestures, in absences, in the way certain churches are viewed, and in the way voices are lowered when passing a golden dome. The village churches don't dominate the landscape by size, but by significance. Their bells mark more than just the time. They signal internal rhythms that the inhabitants recognize without thinking. There are days when the sound summons, others when it reminds, and some when it warns. People know when it is appropriate to pause for a few seconds, discreetly cross themselves, or simply remain silent. Not doing so doesn't cause an immediate scandal, but it is recorded. Faith in Viatskoye isn't displayed. It's practiced. It's evident in small, everyday actions that go unnoticed by outsiders. Lighting a candle before an important trip, avoiding certain tasks on specific days, not sweeping the house on designated dates, and refraining from discussing family matters at certain times in the religious calendar. These practices aren't always explained. They're simply assumed to be part of the natural order of things. Religious holidays aren't experienced as boisterous social events. They are times of reflection, repetition, and continuity. The community participates because it always has. Families organize themselves around these dates. Visits are planned, decisions are postponed, and conflicts are put on hold. Religion acts as a temporal framework that organizes the emotional life of the village. The church's influence extends beyond the temples. It's present in how relationships are judged, how a family's reputation is built, and the expectations placed on each individual. Marriage, separation, cohabitation, raising children, caring for the elderly. Everything is permeated by a notion of what is right that has religious roots, even when God is not explicitly mentioned. In Viatskoye, faith functions as a collective identity. Not openly believing is not a crime, but neither is it something that is announced. Religious neutrality is often interpreted as distance, exaggerated devotion as suspicion. Balance is the norm, respect without boasting, comply without imposing. Those who understand this code navigate the village more easily. Important family decisions are rarely made without considering the religious impact. Choosing godparents, setting wedding dates, deciding on moves, accepting or rejecting certain job opportunities, everything passes through a filter that is not always conscious, but is there nonetheless. Ignoring it can generate invisible tensions that manifest themselves long afterward. Religion also defines what is not discussed. There are questions that are not asked, boundaries that are not crossed, opinions that are kept to oneself. Not out of fear, but out of respect for a structure that has sustained the community for generations. In a small place, openly challenging those foundations doesn't provoke direct confrontation, but it does lead to gradual isolation. There are local stories of people who chose to live apart from these customs. They weren't expelled or publicly singled out. They simply stopped being invited, consulted, and taken into account. In Viatskoye, faith doesn't punish with noise. It punishes with silence. At the same time, the church offers solace. In times of crisis, loss, or uncertainty, many residents find in religious rituals a way to sustain themselves emotionally. It's not just about believing in the divine, but about participating in something that connects past, present, and future. Faith functions as a shared language that reduces loneliness. The beauty of order and its dark side. Viatskoye dazzles at first glance because everything seems to be exactly where it should be. The immaculate facades, clean streets, well-tended flowers, unworn signs, and absence of chaos create an image that conveys calm, stability, and pride. However, this perfection comes at a price. Maintaining it has a human cost that rarely appears in photographs or guided tours. Order, in this town, is not just aesthetic, it is a constant demand. The pressure to preserve this image is daily and silent. There are no signs indicating it, no visible written rules, but everyone knows how they should behave. Clothing, tone of voice, the way one walks along certain streets, even the way one sits on a public bench, all respond to a collective expectation. It's not about consciously acting for the tourist, but about maintaining a consistency that has become part of the place's identity. Breaking it doesn't cause an immediate scandal, but it does create a discomfort that hangs in the air. Many residents admit in private conversations that living in such a closely watched town creates constant tension. Every mistake is amplified, every misstep is remembered. Visual perfection demands constant self-control. There is no room for public emotional outbursts. Arguments are kept indoors. Conflicts are diffused before spilling out onto the street. Sadness, weariness, and frustration are skillfully concealed. To tourists, Viatskoye presents a polished version of itself. Measured smiles, well-rehearsed historical narratives, and polite, distant hospitality. What goes unsaid is that not everyone benefits equally from the constant flow of visitors. Tourism sustains the town, but it also shapes it. Many jobs depend directly or indirectly on this seasonal economy, creating a pervasive sense of fragility. If tourism declines, everything trembles. There are clear inequalities between those directly connected to museums, restaurants, and accommodations, and those living on the margins of this picture-perfect scene. Some households share in the glitz of the museum town, others maintain it from the shadows. This isn't discussed publicly. The official narrative needs consistency. Acknowledging economic tensions would shatter the illusion of total harmony. Dependence on tourism also limits personal choices. Moving, changing jobs, or questioning certain practices can be interpreted as a threat to the overall equilibrium. In Viatskoye, collective well-being takes precedence over individual desires, but not always fairly. Those who don't quite fit in learn to adapt or resign themselves to it. There are real cases of internal conflicts handled with almost surgical silence. Family disputes over inheritances, workplace disagreements, tensions between neighbors, alcohol problems, or debt. None of this is exposed. There are no public denunciations or visible confrontations. The method is different. Social cooling. Fewer invitations, fewer words, less presence. The conflict doesn't disappear. It's encapsulated. This mechanism is unsettlingly effective. The town continues to function. The image remains intact. But the emotional cost accumulates. Some residents live with the feeling of always playing a role, even in front of their own neighbors. The line between what is authentic and what is expected becomes blurred. Order also breeds a fear of making mistakes. Not of formal punishment, but of silent disapproval. In a place where everyone knows each other, reputation is a fragile asset. A bad decision can haunt a person for years. That's why many opt for extreme caution. Don't take risks. Don't stand out too much. Don't cause discomfort. Paradoxically, this rigidity coexists with undeniable beauty. Viatskoye is harmonious precisely because it has learned to contain chaos. The problem arises when that containment becomes oppressive, when order ceases to be a refuge and transforms into an invisible cage. Some residents acknowledge that the town is more welcoming to visitors than to those who stay. Tourists can look around, ask questions, make mistakes, and leave. Residents cannot. Their margin for error is minimal. Their history is anchored to the place. There is no anonymity to protect them. Festivals, celebrations, and traditions not for everyone. In Viatskoye, festivals don't function as tourist showcases, even though many are presented as open cultural events. From the outside, they appear to be friendly, well-organized celebrations, full of traditional music, historical costumes, and long tables. However, those who stay long enough begin to notice a clear difference between being present and truly participating. In this town, celebration is an extension of collective identity, not a spectacle designed to integrate everyone. Local festivities often revolve around orthodox religious holidays, historical commemorations of the town's mercantile past, or cultural events linked to museums. There are processions, bells marking the rhythm of the day, choirs singing ancient melodies, and rituals repeated with almost choreographic precision. Everything seems accessible, but not everything is shared in the same way. The visitor observes, photographs, and applauds. The local participates from a different perspective. There are gestures, glances, and silences that defy explanation. Who stands near the center? Who stays on the edges? Who converses with whom? Hierarchies aren't announced, but they're felt. In Viatskoye, celebrations also bring order to the community. Alcohol plays an important, albeit discreet, role. It's not about letting loose, but about memory and connection. Toasts carry symbolic weight. A glass isn't raised for just anyone or at any time. The names mentioned matter. So do the silences between toasts. To the outsider, it might seem like a lively gathering. To the local, every gesture carries accumulated meaning. Music is another internal language. Traditional songs don't just entertain, they evoke memories. They speak of ancestors, hard work, loss, and pride. Those unfamiliar with these stories hear melodies. Those who belong hear chapters of their own collective biography. That's why there are moments when the music becomes intimate, even uncomfortable for those who don't fully understand what's being evoked. In some celebrations, the carefully maintained facade cracks for a moment. Loud laughter, brief arguments that quickly fizzle out, glances laden with old disagreements. Nothing explodes, but something is revealed. These are seconds in which the town ceases to be a picture postcard and shows its human side. These moments often go unnoticed by the casual visitor, but not by those who observe closely. There are festivals where tourists are welcome only up to a point. They can participate in the public aspects, in the organized events, in the cultural tours. But when the celebration moves to private spaces, the boundary becomes clear. There are no explanations or direct rejections. The invitation simply doesn't arrive. It's not hostility, it's protecting the circle. Some visitors recall with discomfort the exact moment they understood they weren't part of it. A conversation cut short upon approaching, a table where there's no room, a generic invitation that never materializes. There's no contempt, but there is a firm distance. Viatskoye doesn't open itself completely to just anyone, least of all during its most significant rituals. Religious celebrations are the most emotionally private. Although anyone can enter a church during a festival, not everyone participates in the same way. There are prayers that are not shared, gestures that only some perform, glances that acknowledge belonging. Faith here is not displayed, it is practiced. And that makes a profound difference. Local pride is strongly felt during these times. Pride in history, in the reconstruction of the village, in having withstood abandonment and flourished once again. This pride does not seek external approval. In fact, it feels uncomfortable when excessively celebrated by outsiders. Viatskoye does not want to be admired. It wants to be respected. Rumors, theories, and half-whispered truths. In Viatskoye, almost nothing is said directly when the topic becomes sensitive. Not because opinions are lacking, but because the town's collective memory has taught that some words carry more weight than they seem. Rumors exist, circulate, and are passed on, but they do so carefully, as if each phrase needs to be tested before being uttered. Here, what is whispered is often more revealing than any official statement. For years, one of the most persistent conversations has revolved around the town's reconstruction. The visible version is familiar: private investment, heritage restoration, cultural preservation, tourism as an economic engine. All of that is true. The houses are immaculate, the museums are open, the streets seem frozen in another century. However, among the residents, that explanation never quite feels right. Not because it's false, but because it feels incomplete. Some locals wonder why so much money was invested in such a small town with no industrial prospects. Others comment that the speed of the transformation was unusual, too rapid by rural standards. Some recall how, in just a few years, buildings that had been abandoned for decades reappeared, restored down to the last detail. No one openly accuses anyone, but the question hangs in the air: why here and not somewhere else? The suspicions don't always point to grandiose conspiracies. Sometimes they are simple, almost domestic doubts. Who decides what gets restored and what doesn't? Why did some families keep their properties while others lost them? Why do some residents have access to steady job opportunities while others only have temporary work tied to tourism? These are questions not asked in public but repeated in kitchens, backyards, and on long walks along the river. Off camera, away from recorders and phones, more complex versions emerge. There's talk of cultural interests, prestige, symbolic control, of turning Viatskoye into a perfect showcase of traditional Russia, orderly, clean, and quiet. Not as a lie, but as a carefully crafted narrative. Some residents are proud of it. Others feel their real lives have been relegated to the background. The fear of speaking out isn't paranoia, it's learned prudence. In small towns, information travels fast, and so do the consequences. A poorly placed comment can close doors, strain relationships, or make someone a topic of conversation for years. That's why many prefer to remain silent or speak only with those they've trusted for decades. Rumors of social surveillance also circulate, not in technological terms, but in human ones. Eyes that record, comments that reach where they shouldn't, silences that serve as a warning. There's no evidence of formal monitoring, but there is a shared feeling that everything is being observed. In Viatskoye, discretion isn't a virtue, it's a tool for social survival. Some myths blend real events with collective imagination. There are tales of signed agreements that no one saw, of conditions imposed on residents in exchange for keeping their homes, of decisions made outside the town that affect daily life without any real local input. Part of this is exaggeration, part is discomfort at the loss of control over one's surroundings. The difference between myth and reality isn't always clear. Many theories arise from gaps in information. When everything isn't explained, people fill in the gaps with assumptions. In Viatskoye, these gaps abound. There are decisions that are simply announced without debate or context. And where there's no explanation, rumors emerge. There are also smaller truths, less spectacular, but more human. Like the fact that not everyone benefits equally from tourism. That there are tensions between those who make a living from the museums and those who have been left out. That some residents feel the town no longer truly belongs to them, but has become a stage for others. These aren't conspiracies, they're pent-up emotions. There are those who staunchly defend the process. They argue that without this investment, Viatskoye would have disappeared. That order and beauty brought jobs, visibility, and pride. And they have a point. The problem isn't the transformation itself, but the feeling of not having fully participated in it, of having been observed rather than listened to. Viatskoye, the village that watches you. You arriving in Viatskoye is like stepping into a world where beauty seems almost too self-conscious. The restored houses, immaculate streets, and manicured gardens create the feeling that someone has carefully considered every detail to be observed. But you soon discover that it's not just the visitor who is observing. Viatskoye is watching you. Every gesture, every step, every glance is perceived and analyzed by those who live there, even without speaking. This invisible tension is what distinguishes this village from any other picturesque spot in Russia. Here, perfection is not only aesthetic, but also social. There are unwritten codes that define how to behave, what to say, and how to look without being observed too closely. Visitors soon realize that Viatskoye transforms them, though not always comfortably. The daily routine, the apparent calm, and the sense of security coexist with a kind of silent pressure that compels you to be mindful of every movement. The decisions one makes in front of a building, a neighbor, or a cafe carry a weight unlike anything else. Even tourists who believe themselves exempt from these rules feel how their actions are interpreted and how curiosity can be met with interest or suspicion. The constant presence of watchful eyes transforms the simple act of walking through the square or looking at a shop window into a meaningful experience. Social control is not authoritarian but subtle and pervasive. There is no need to impose laws. The town self-regulates through observation and tacit respect for traditions that have survived generations. Each family has its own set of codes, and each neighbor knows the other's story, sometimes more than they themselves remember. Discretion becomes a valuable currency, and silence, a shared language. It is not about hiding, but about preserving a delicate balance between privacy and community, where excessive intrusion is penalized with glances or comments that seem innocent, but reveal the invisible machinery that maintains the order of the place. Viatskoye doesn't just observe, it provokes wordless reflection. The perfection of its outward appearance, the cleanliness, the harmony of its buildings, the immaculate paths, and the seemingly minute details challenge visitors to question what is real and what is constructed. Every corner speaks a story, but not all of them are told. Some are intuited, others are perceived only in the atmosphere, in the way the neighbors interact, in the restrained smile of a woman who knows every secret of her street. Beauty is, at times, a mechanism of control. It hypnotizes, seduces, distracts, and at the same time keeps everyone aware that nothing goes unnoticed. Desire and attraction are also transformed in this context. The women of the village, with their natural elegance, their restraint, and the strength of a character shaped by rural life and generations of tradition, exude a presence that visitors don't forget. It's not about exaggerated gestures or explicit seduction. It's something subtle, silent, almost hypnotic. The magnetism of human relationships in Viatskoye is different. It's negotiated with eye contact and respect, with invisible codes that many foreigners fail to grasp. Every interaction can have implications that go beyond the obvious, and learning to interpret these signals is key to not feeling out of place.